I heard a idiom bite the bullet. I heard an idiom bite the bullet. What it mean?
The idiom bite the bullet means to endure a painful or otherwise unpleasant situation that is unavoidable. The phrase comes from the olden days when there was no time or ability to administer anesthesia during surgery, so patients would bite down on a bullet to cope with the pain. How did you come across this idiom?
I read on newspaper. I heard on YouTube.
That's interesting. It's a phrase that shows up in a lot of different places, often used to describe someone facing a tough decision or dealing with a difficult situation. Did you come across it in a specific context or story that caught your attention?
Yeah, it caught my attention. Could you please explain and use this idiom in two or three sentences in different scenario?
Sure. Here are a couple of examples using bite the bullet. 1. After months of avoiding the issue, I finally bit the bullet and scheduled the surgery. It was necessary, even though I was scared. 2. The team knew they had to bite the bullet and work over the weekend to finish the project on time. Everyone was exhausted, but it had to be done. These examples show how the idiom can be used in situations where someone has to face something difficult or unavoidable. Does that help clarify how you might use it?
Narrate any story with this idiom.
Once upon a time, in a small coastal village, there was an old fisherman named Elias. He was known for his extraordinary tales of the sea, each filled with adventure and mysticism. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Elias gathered the village children around the crackling fire. He began to tell them about the legend of the whispering waves. According to Elias, there was a hidden cove along the coastline where the waves whispered secrets of the deep ocean. He claimed that on a full moon night, if one listened closely, the waves would reveal the location of a sunken treasure. The children, wide eyed and eager, decided they would find this mystical cove. Led by Mira, a brave and curious girl, they waited for the next full moon. Armed with nothing but a lantern and their determination, they snuck out on the night of the full moon. After hours of searching along the jagged coastline, they stumbled upon a secluded cove. The moonlight danced on the water, creating a silver path leading to the waves that hummed a soft melody. Remembering Elias's words, they listened intently. To their amazement, the waves whispered in a harmony that only the purest of hearts could understand, guiding them to a spot on the beach. Digging eagerly, the children found an old chest, encrusted with barnacles and sea salt. Inside, it was filled with gold coins and jewels, glinting under the moonlight. They returned to the village as heroes, their arms laden with treasure. Elias smiled knowingly as the children recounted their adventure. The village celebrated their bravery, and the cove was thereafter known as the Whispering Waves, a place of magic and mystery. From that day on, every full moon, the children of the village would visit the cove, listening to the secrets of the waves, reminding everyone that sometimes legends are more than just stories. And so, the story of Elias and the Whispering Waves became yet another story tale passed down through generations in the small coastal village.
Use the idiom bite the bullet, better late than never, beat around the bush, a dime a dozen, a blessing in disguise, call it a day in a story.
In the bustling town of Greenwood, there lived a young artist named Lucy, known for her vibrant paintings, but also her tendency to procrastinate. One sunny morning, she realized a big art show was only a week away. After months of postponing her work, Lucy decided to bite the bullet and start her masterpiece. She worked day and night, her studio filled with the smell of paint and the sound of brushes against canvas. As the deadline approached, Lucy, tired but determined, muttered, "Better late than never," as she added the final touches to her painting. The next day, at the art show, Lucy's best friend, Mark, an aspiring but secretive writer, visited her booth. He had been struggling with writer's block and was circling around the idea of writing a mystery novel without actually starting it. Lucy, noticing his hesitation, said, "Mark, stop beating around the bush. Just start writing. Your first draft doesn't have to be perfect." Nearby, another artist was selling handcrafted jewelry. Although beautiful, her creations were a dime a dozen at the show, overshadowed by more unique pieces. Despite this, she remained optimistic, hoping to gain at least some exposure. As the day wound down, a sudden rainstorm swept through, sending everyone scrambling for cover. Lucy's painting, however, was left unprotected and was splattered with raindrops. Distraught, she believed her hard work was ruined. Yet, when the rain ceased and the sun peeked through the clouds, the raindrops had blended the colors on her canvas in ways she could never have imagined, transforming her work into a mesmerizing, abstract piece. Realizing the unexpected beauty in her accidentally altered painting, Lucy embraced what had seemed like a disaster. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as her painting caught the eye of a renowned art collector who was captivated by its uniqueness. He bought it on the spot, providing Lucy with her big break. At the end of the day, as the sun set over Greenwood, Lucy, exhausted but ecstatic, decided to call it a day, reflecting on the unexpected turns that led to her success. This story of courage, creativity, and unexpected outcomes will linger in the hearts of Greenwood's residents for years to come.
Narrate any other story with these idioms.
In a quaint village nestled between rolling hills and lush forests, there lived an old baker named Samuel. Samuel's bakery was the heart of the village, known for its heavenly pastries and warm, welcoming atmosphere. However, Samuel was growing tired and knew he couldn't run the bakery forever. He needed to find a successor, but the thought of retiring and handing over his life's work was daunting. One day, Samuel decided to bite the bullet and placed an advertisement seeking an apprentice. He received many responses, but one stood out: a young, enthusiastic baker named Ella, who had recently moved to the village. She was eager to learn and had a genuine passion for baking. As Samuel trained Ella, he realized that she had a natural talent, but her methods were unconventional and sometimes messy. Initially hesitant, Samuel thought, better late than never, and began to embrace her innovative techniques, which brought new flavors and ideas to the bakery. Ella, on the other hand, was nervous about suggesting changes to Samuel's traditional recipes. She didn't want to beat around the bush, so she directly expressed her ideas for modernizing some of the bakery's offerings. Samuel appreciated her straightforwardness and was impressed by her confidence and creativity. In the village, other businesses were struggling to attract customers, with new cafes and bakeries popping up like they were a dime a dozen. Samuel's bakery, however, continued to thrive under Ella's fresh approach, drawing in both loyal customers and newcomers. Then an unexpected challenge arose. A large supermarket chain opened nearby, offering mass produced baked goods at lower prices. It seemed like a major threat to Samuel's bakery, but it turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
How can I use the term, the idiom, uh, bite the bullet?
To use the idiom bite the bullet, you typically apply it when someone decides to face a difficult situation or take action in a scenario they've been avoiding due to its unpleasantness. Here are a few examples of how you might use it. 1. I've been putting off fixing my car because I know it's going to be expensive, but I finally decided to bite the bullet and take it to the mechanic. 2. We need to bite the bullet and have a serious discussion about our budget cuts. It won't be pleasant, but it's necessary. 3. After hesitating for years, she bit the bullet and enrolled in law school to pursue her dream of becoming a lawyer. In each of these situations, bite the bullet emphasizes taking a tough but necessary step.
How can I use dime a dozen and what it mean?
The idiom a dime a dozen refers to something that is very common and therefore not considered to be valuable or special. It suggests that the item or trait is so plentiful that it's cheap or not worth much. You can use a dime a dozen to emphasize the abundance or lack of uniqueness of something. Here are a few examples. 1. Bloggers are a dime a dozen these days It's the truly creative ones who stand out. 2. Ideas are a dime a dozen, but what really matters is how you execute them. 3. In this industry, promises are a dime a dozen, only results count. Each of these sentences uses the idiom to underscore how commonplace certain things have become, often to encourage focusing on quality or distinctiveness instead.
More examples. I need more examples.
Certainly, here are more examples of how you can use the idiom a dime a dozen in different contexts. 1. Startup companies are a dime a dozen in Silicon Valley. What sets yours apart? 2. Romantic comedies are a dime a dozen, but finding one that truly resonates is rare. 3. During the festival, street performers are a dime a dozen, each trying to capture the crowd's attention. 4. Generic job applications are a dime a dozen. To get noticed, you really need to personalize your cover letter. 5. These days, coffee shops are a dime a dozen. A great atmosphere or unique blend can make all the difference. These examples highlight how the phrase can be used to discuss the prevalence and sometimes the diminished perceived value of common things or occurrences.
Great. And how can I use the idiom beat around the bush?
The idiom beat around the bush is used when someone is avoiding the main point, often in a conversation, by speaking about less important details instead of getting to the heart of the matter. It suggests a reluctance or hesitation to address something directly. Here's how you can use it in different scenarios. 1. Let's not beat around the bush. Do you want the job or not? 2. Stop beating around the bush and tell me how much it's really going to cost. 3. During the meeting, he just beat around the bush instead of addressing the real issues we're facing. 4. If you have bad news, don't beat around the bush. Just tell me straight up. 5. She kept beating around the bush, which was frustrating because we needed a direct answer to make a decision. These examples show how the idiom can be used to encourage straightforwardness and discourage evasive or indirect communication.
Okay, and how can I use the idiom cutting corners and what it mean?
The idiom cutting corners means to do something in the easiest, quickest, or cheapest way, often sacrificing quality or skipping necessary steps in the process. It's generally used to criticize a lack of thoroughness or adherence to standards. Here's how you can use it in different scenarios. 1. We can't afford to cut corners on this project. Our reputation for quality is at stake. 2. Cutting corners on the construction materials led to the structure being unsafe. 3. If you cut corners on your research, your paper won't hold up under scrutiny. 4. He always tries to cut corners on his tax returns, which could get him in trouble one day. 5. By cutting corners on employee training, the company risks lower performance and higher turnover. These examples illustrate different situations where cutting corners might be tempting, but could lead to negative consequences due to the compromises made.
And what about the idiom hit the sack?
It sounds like you're asking about the phrase hit the sack, which is an informal way of saying to go to bed or go to sleep. Here are some examples of how you can use this idiom. 1. After such a long day at work, I'm ready to hit the sack early tonight. 2. We have an early start tomorrow, so let's hit the sack. 3. After the movie finished, I was so tired that I just hit the sack as soon as I got home. 4. He studied until midnight and then hit the sack to get some rest before the exam. This phrase is often used when someone is very tired and wants to emphasize their need to go to sleep almost immediately.
By using the cutting corners and hit the sack, narrate a story.
In a bustling city filled with ambitious souls, there lived a young graphic designer named Theo. Theo was talented, but notorious for cutting corners to meet his deadlines. He believed this approach saved time, allowing him to juggle multiple projects and maximize his earnings. One day, Theo landed a dream project with a prestigious advertising agency. It was his chance to really make a name for himself in the industry. Excited and eager to impress, Theo started the project with his usual strategy, trying to finish the work as quickly as possible by skimping on the finer details and using pre-made templates instead of creating original designs. As the deadline approached, Theo presented his work, confident that his time-saving tricks had paid off once again. However, the agency's creative director, a keen and meticulous professional, immediately noticed the lack of originality and the rushed execution. She pointed out that true creativity and quality cannot be rushed or fabricated through shortcuts. Feeling embarrassed and realizing the opportunity slipping from his hands, Theo asked for a chance to redo the project, this time committing not to cut corners. The director, seeing potential in Theo, agreed to give him another chance. For the next week, Theo worked diligently, pouring all his energy and creativity into the project. He paid attention to every detail, ensuring that each element of the design was both original and up to the agency's high standards. Each night, utterly exhausted from the day's effort, Theo would hit the sack early, determined to be well rested and sharp for the next day's work. Finally, Theo presented his new design to the agency. The creative director was impressed by the dramatic improvement and the evident hard work Theo had put into the project. Theo's revised design was not only accepted, but also praised as a highlight in the agency's campaign, earning him a long-term contract. From that experience, Theo learned that success and reputation in his field demanded more than just doing things quickly. Quality and originality were key. He adjusted his approach to work, no longer cutting corners, and as his dedication to quality showed in his outputs, his career flourished more than he had ever imagined. Theo's story became a lesson among his peers. Shortcuts might seem tempting, but true craftsmanship requires time and effort. And every night as he hit the sack, Theo felt satisfied knowing his hard work was building a legacy of excellence.
How can I use idiom call it a day?
The idiom call it a day means to stop working on something, either for a temporary break or at the end of a day's work. It's often used when someone decides they have done enough and it's time to stop. Here are some ways you might use this idiom. 1. We've been working on this report for 8 hours straight. Let's call it a day and look at it again tomorrow with fresh eyes. 2. After hours of gardening, she was tired and decided to call it a day. 3. Once we finish this last task, we can call it a day. 4. The team worked hard to meet the deadline, and once they did, the manager suggested they call it a day and continue the rest next week. This phrase is useful for indicating a natural and satisfactory stopping point after a period of effort.
How can I use make a long story short?
The idiom, make a long story short, is used to indicate that you are skipping details to summarize a story or explanation.
How can I use it? How can I use make a long story short?
To make a long story short, you'll want to focus on summarizing the key points or outcomes of a story while omitting less essential details. Here's how you can do it. 1. Identify the core elements. Determine what the main events, decisions, or results were. 2. Skip secondary details. Avoid mentioning every small event or minor character that does not contribute to the overall outcome. 3. Highlight conclusions. Emphasize the end result or the lesson learned from the events. For example, if you're telling a friend about a complex project at work, instead of detailing every meeting and email, you might say, to make a long story short, after several unexpected challenges, we managed to launch the product on time and it was well received by the customers. This approach helps keep your listener engaged by delivering the most important information without getting lost in the details.
Use this idiom in a story.
Sure, here's a story using the idiom, make a long story short. In a small coastal town, there lived an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson, who was known for her elaborate garden parties. One summer, she planned her most ambitious party yet, with an extensive guest list that included everyone from the town mayor to local artisans. As the day of the party approached, everything that could go wrong did. First, a sudden storm rolled in, soaking her beautifully arranged outdoor setting. Then, the caterer called to say that there had been a mix up with the order and the food would arrive late. Mrs. Thompson, however, was not one to give up easily. She rallied her neighbors, who helped move the party indoors. They set up decorations, arranged makeshift seating, and even the local bakery chipped in with fresh pastries. Meanwhile, Mrs. Thompson's grandson, who was a musician, organized a small ensemble of local performers to provide entertainment. To make a long story short, despite the initial chaos, the garden party turned into an intimate indoor gathering that was talked about for years. It wasn't the party Mrs. Thompson had planned, but it was a memorable evening that brought the community closer together, showcasing their resilience and camaraderie.
How can I use the word tapestry? Tapestry.
The word tapestry typically refers to a piece of thick textile fabric with pictures or designs formed by weaving colored weft threads or by embroidering on canvas, often used as a wall hanging. You can use tapestry in a few different ways. One, literal use. The Grand Hall was adorned with an ancient tapestry that depicted the Battle of Hastings. Two, metaphorical use. The novel weaves a rich tapestry of love, betrayal, and redemption. Three, descriptive use. Her tapestry of experiences abroad provided a broad perspective on cultural differences. These examples show how tapestry can be used both in its traditional sense to describe a physical woven artwork and metaphorically to describe something complex and intricate, like a story or a set of experiences.
Narrate a story where I can use the word tapestry metaphorically.
In the heart of a bustling city lived an old man named Mr. Jacobs, known in his neighborhood as the Keeper of Stories. His small, cozy apartment was like a museum of his travels and the lives he touched. Every evening, children and adults alike would gather at his place to listen to his tales. Mr. Jacobs began each story session with a deep, thoughtful look around his room, his eyes landing on objects that seemed ordinary but held extraordinary tales. Each of these, he would say, is a thread in the grand tapestry of my life. There was the weathered teacup from a small village in China, a faded photograph of a young woman dancing under the stars in Argentina, and a chunk of bright blue glass picked up from the sands of Egypt. One evening, he shared a story about a time he got lost in the Sahara Desert. It was the vibrant tapestry of the starlit sky that guided me to safety, he reminisced, explaining how the patterns of stars led him to a nomadic tribe who welcomed him with open arms. Another night, he told of a shipwreck off the coast of Italy during his youth. The tapestry of my life could have ended there, in the cold waters of the Mediterranean, but it was just the beginning, he said. He spoke of the fishermen who rescued him and how, in return, he helped the small village revive their struggling economy by introducing new fishing techniques he had learned abroad. Mr. Jacobs saw his life as a tapestry woven with threads of chance encounters, daring adventures, and heartfelt connections. Each story added depth and color to this metaphorical tapestry, illustrating the interconnectedness of human experiences. His listeners, young and old, would leave his apartment feeling a part of this tapestry, inspired by the idea that their own lives were also being woven into something larger than themselves. Mr. Jacobs not only shared his stories, he showed everyone that every moment, every person, and every decision adds a unique thread to the intricate tapestry of life.
Write a review, positive review for my English teacher.
Absolutely. Here's a positive review for your English teacher. I have had the absolute pleasure of learning English from a truly exceptional teacher. With a deep understanding of the language and a genuine passion for teaching, they have consistently gone above and beyond to ensure each lesson is engaging and enlightening. Their patience and encouragement have greatly boosted my confidence in speaking and writing English. Thanks to their innovative teaching methods and personal attention, I've seen significant improvement in my language skills. This teacher doesn't just educate, They inspire and empower their students to reach their full potential. I am incredibly grateful for their dedication and highly recommend their classes to anyone looking to enhance their proficiency in English.
Write a positive review for history teacher.
Certainly. Here's a positive review for your history teacher. Taking history classes with this teacher has been an enlightening and engaging experience. Their passion for history is contagious, and they have a unique ability to make the past come alive through vivid storytelling and thought provoking discussions. Each lesson is well prepared and rich with content that not only covers the syllabus, but also connects historical events to modern day issues, making them relevant and interesting. Their dedication to student understanding is evident, as they always take the time to clarify doubts and encourage critical thinking. This teacher has not only deepened my knowledge of history, but also my appreciation for it. I can't recommend them highly enough to anyone looking to gain a deeper understanding of history in an enjoyable and meaningful way.